back to S.P.L.I.F.F with your host, Fawn. S.P.L.I.F.F stands for Spiritual Perceptions on Life, Interconnections, and Fuckery with Fawn. Yep, that's a little bit of a mouthful, but that sums up the entirety of this podcast. So I hope that you find something that you can connect to. If you see the video, if you're watching the video in the background, I do have some of my own personal art that represents a very intimate and soulful connection, and I'll talk about those a little bit at the end. And today's episode is going to be about past lives and the life interconnections of this life to the past and the next after that. And we're also going to talk about my current past life memories that I can recall. I'm not going to give all of them because that's a lot, but I will touch on some of them and how they impacted my spirituality and moving through life. And I want to talk about how that corresponds with soulmates / twin flames. Depending on which belief system you follow, they're kind of the same thing. They have slightly different description, which I will also specify the difference. But to me, they're kind of the same. And how we as people, because we remember these past lives and these connections, how that energy transfers from this life to the next and the previous. And for someone like me who's an empath, how much that impacts my emotions and things like that. And how that impacts like the dreams and how I put that into my music and art, as you see in the background here. So, let me start by telling you the story of a past life connection with someone who was very important in my life of growing, and I kind of like held on to them for too long, longer than I should have, but they're beautiful down to their soul. It just wasn't a great relationship for us. Oh, before I do that, let me explain what a past life is. A past life to me is, so we're alive right now in 2024, wherever you're located, and you can remember a past life from the past, hence the word past life, of, someone that could have been back in the 1400s or before that. It's just, I have a hard time putting dates exactly on my past life memories, but I more just describe like what the time era looked like, and I can kind of guess sometimes. I don't really focus too much on the time era, just that it's real and that it happened and that it impacts my connections with people. So, jumping back to this person, I'm gonna again try to stay gender neutral. I don't need anyone attacking anyone for anything, and everyone has the right to their own privacy of their life. Just because I'm choosing to share mine and my experiencing doesn't mean that they should have to deal with the repercussions of that. So when I met this person, I was extremely infatuated and blown away by their physical and what I could pick up their spiritual presence. I didn't quite understand what it was, but I was like, oh, this is someone I need to know. And at first, they were very, like, just wanted to be a friend. About 2 weeks into, like, seeing each other, I had the past life dream. And in this dream, we were of the same, like, skin tone and the same gender. And this human is a different ethnicity than I am in this current life, but in our past life we had the same ethnicity, which seemed to be Native American, like that kind of skin tone, and the kind of clothes that we were wearing, and that there wasn't like buildings and all kinds of crazy pollution and stuff like that. So in the dream, oh, I had it in a dream, and in this dream, it was so beautiful. I can remember sometimes I have a hard time like fully explaining all of these beautiful things because they're just so breathtaking to remember and sit through them and to relive them. So me and this person are sitting in a field of yellow flowers, and I don't know exactly what kind of yellow flowers are, but if I saw them, I would know that those are the flowers. I'm pretty sure they're ones that grow around here in North Carolina. But we're sitting there, and I'm sitting next to this person, and I'm just observing how I feel that they're such a beautiful person. And I will say beautiful for both male and female, so don't start jumping to conclusions. um, how beautiful they are, and just like admiring this person, and they're admiring back. And it was just an endless field of yellow flowers that was bordered with really tall pine trees. So we're sitting there, and then someone who I guess I knew comes up and was like, they're looking for you. You have to go back. You have to go back. And I just remember thinking, like, oh no, I don't want to go back. I want to spend more time with this person, and I know I'm not allowed to be with them. And I was like, okay, as the dream goes on, you're like kind of coherently knowing what's going on. So then it moves to I retrieve. I go back to my home that was close by this meadow, and they go back to theirs because we were from different tribes of this location. And my father, who was the chief of this tribe, and my father was like, "Oh, you were out with that person again, weren't you?" And I was like, "Yes, I want to marry that person. I don't want to do this arranged marriage." And he was like, "This is for our people and for their people. And so you have to do this arranged marriage." And then the dream flashed to another snippet. It just like went black and flashed. And it's me and this person like running away. We're running through the woods. We have like these handmade backpack type things. Not quite really a backpack, but and so we're leaving. We left our tribes to be together. And that's all I remember of the dream. And I remember when I woke up, I was like, oh, okay, so this is a person from my past life who I chose over what I felt like I was supposed to do. I followed my heart. And in my previous episodes, you will hear me say that my father's motto was follow your heart, Mija. So I felt that was pretty accurate. However, I think it was like into about I'd say like 2 months. I had my spirit guides come to me in another dream about this person, and what it looked like was I was in this field of yellow flowers again, and my spirit guides is this big old ball of energy that kind of outlined like a personly-ish figure, but you couldn't quite tell, which is like floating in the middle of the meadow, and this person of my past life wasn't there, but I knew where I was. And they spoke to me and was like, if you stay with this person, it will result in the death of you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, all right. Then when I woke up, I was like, what does that mean? The death? I mean, like physical death, spiritual death? I don't know. But I was so in love with this person and felt so deeply connected to remember those feelings, and they felt so real. And I already had feelings in this life prior to remembering that, they just emphasized it. Um, I actually, I spoke to my grandfather, my dad's dad, about this person when I had called him at the time. I this was in college, and it was when I had actually discovered a dead body on campus, which is a whole another story, which I didn't really entail on putting it in this one. So I think I'll leave that for another episode. But I had called him to deal with the spiritual repercussions of discovering that dead body. And in that conversation, I remember telling him about my past life dream, and then my dream, the warning from my spirit guides. And he was like, why are you questioning it? Listen to your spirit guides. They're always right. But I wanted to believe so hard that this person was the one for me, and that I was willing to do anything to make sure that that happened, like sacrifice anything, including myself, for this person. That is ultimately one of the big issues with that relationship in the long run. But uh, I just really wanted to share that one because the past life remembrance of not feeling like I was allowed to be with this person, and then re-meeting that person in this life and feeling like, oh, I don't have any obligations in this life. I'm not in some noble family and have to marry certain people. Like, this is a person that I can be with and it won't be an issue. I think, I think, I said it before that everything happens for a reason. So I learned a lot from this relationship, and I am very curious to what would have happened had I chose another path. But it ended up, I guess for the greater good. But yeah, I was so deeply, deeply in love that I ignored my spirit guides and my grandfather, who's a medicine man, who was like, yeah, you should probably listen to them. So that's past life number one. And the next one I'm going to share is with it's another romantic partner past life. This had come several years after the one that I just told you. And in this one, when I had met this person and I were just we started out as coworkers. I was their boss and they were just my um my employee. And like before anyone jumps on that, like I had a rule, I don't date at work. And I feel like I still really, really hold that rule. Um and me and this person became friends, and then it just slowly became more. And it wasn't until I had, well, I shouldn't say slowly became more. It wasn't until I had the past life dream that I realized, oh, maybe I really do have feelings for this person. Because people at my job were like, oh my gosh, there's totally something going on between you two. You guys totally have a connection. I was like, no, 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 no. We're just coworkers. We're just friends. And so when I had this dream, the dream was that it's kind of similar to the previous one, which is interesting that I don't know if this is just like a thing, like my soul is being reborn and constantly having to be wed off to other people. Like I think it's the concept of having to sacrifice myself for the greater good or for the other people. I feel like that's a very common theme with my soul, and as if like with my soul contract when I was brought here, I was like okay with that. And I guess I still am. I definitely do a lot of things in my life where I'm still, quote unquote, like sacrificing myself for other people. But with all the therapeutic work I've done, I try not to sacrifice too much because if you don't take care of yourself, like, you can't take care of other people. So, this dream, I was a princess of a royal family, and I had blonde hair and blue eyes. I just specifically remember because in the dream I was like looking at myself in the mirror. And in my room, and to the right of me opens my big old doors to the room that you see in like your stereotypical, like, why do I keep saying stereotypical? In castles from that time. And in comes my designated royal guard who's supposed to protect me. Well, he and I had a love affair. I fell in love with him, and he, for the most part of it, he was very, like, not about it until, because he was supposed to be my guard, but I was pretty persistent. And so he comes into the room, and I just remember I was sobbing, and I was like, I don't want to be wed away. We should just run away together. And he was like, why don't you just tell your father, the king? And I was like, he will never understand. We can't. You're gonna be banished from the lands, this and that. And this person was like, oh, well, why don't you just tell your father? And he was like, oh, I keep saying hey. Okay. This person was like, well, why don't you just tell your father? And I was like, there's no way that my dad would understand. Um, you'll be banished from the lands. Like, you're not supposed to be in a relationship with me, whatever. So I ended up in the dream telling my father that I wanted to marry this person. my guard. And my father surprisingly accepted it, but told me that in this choice will have serious consequences because the prearranged marriage was to create a treaty between um, another kingdom. Sounds just like the first one, right? Like it's just like I don't know, why that connection's there, but it's there. And so, uh, he was like, I just need you to understand, I love you and you're my only daughter, and so I value you and I want to give you what you want. And, me and your mother was an arranged marriage and we made it work, but I also know that that's not the case all the time. So we'll stand by you, but understand what comes with this. And I was willing to accept that, and so was everyone in my support system. Well, then the dream flashes to our castle is being taken over by enemies who were actually the people we were supposed to sign the treaty with. They rebelled against or retaliated against us canceling the arranged marriage so that I could be with who I wanted. And I told my knight, I was like, we gotta go. We have to leave. And he's like, I can't leave you here, and I can't leave your family here, so we have to stay and fight. And we were like kind of like arguing over whether or not we were gonna run away. And by the time it happened, the people ended up coming inside and came in and unalived this person. And I collapsed down on my knees, sobbing and crying, and just like threw myself over top of them. And I just couldn't bear to live without them. I know it sounds like some fairy tale, sounds so dramatic. And I ended up being unalived while I grieved on top of this person. And so I just find it very ironic that my past life memories are so connected when it comes to like my romantic partners. If I remember a dream with them, it's usually fell in love with someone I'm not quote unquote supposed to be with. I'm supposed to do arranged marriage, and maybe that comes in correspondence with my soul is so against anything that hinders free will. And I'm very outspoken for anything like that, and very outspoken for justice. And I really believe that us as humans should be able to do what feels right as long as it's not like physically I don't know. That's as long as it's not harming anyone. And I understand that in itself is a whole like that's a whole thing. It weighs back and forth. Well, because some people would be like, well, this person felt like it was right to harm this person. Like, no, I don't know. For me, I feel like I should be able to have the freedom to love who I want to love. And I think that should be the norm for people, for human existence, as long as it's not like inappropriate, like pedophiles, and like that's not and the grooming. No, I don't stand for that. That is not okay. So that was the second life that I wanted to share. And then the third life I want to share is not a romantic past life. I wanted to make sure that I gave different versions of lives that I remember, because so many are based around my romantic relationships, but I have several that are also not. So I have a friend, and she is wonderful, and she doesn't care if I talk about her on the podcast. She's a great human being. She came into the college, it was 2 years after I started, and she also plays the flute like I do. She's just great. Her name's Kat, and I'll link her socials I'll link her socials below. She does some awesome tarot readings, and she does some fitness now. She's in the army, so she's a wonderful human. And I remember having my past life dream about her. And ironically enough, mine and her relationship, I feel like, is very like sisterly in this life. But in this past life, the one that I do remember, and from this one, I realized that we've been in several lives together, not just one, not just two, like the one I remember and then popping back up. which the first person that I shared, I specifically remembered a specific number of times that this person's been in my life, and that also emphasized why I thought they were my soulmate, because I remembered 229. I don't know why, but that just feels like the amount of times that they have been in my life. And with the second one I just shared with the night, I can't pull a number, but that connection with that person feels more in depth and real than the previous one, and healthy. And it's weird how past lives can work. And I can share mine and I can give my input, but really I'm almost as clueless as other people when they ask like really detailed questions. I don't know. This is what my experience. Anyways, Kat's and I's relationships is very sisterly, and in this life, I was her child. I remember like being held in her arms, and I'm looking up at her face, and it was almost like an anime. Like behind her was this beautiful like yellowy type sunshine, and the person that she was with was someone from my childhood that I actually went to high school with. And so I was like, oh, that makes sense. I've always felt connected to this person too, and now I understand. But yeah, it was really that was weird. It's weird how it in different lives you hold different um, connections to these people, whether you're their mom in one life and their sister in the next, or it's just weird, but these people keep coming back. And when I talked about Dow's life with me, Dow was my biological sibling in the first life that we remember. And in some of the other lives, we have been biological siblings as well. But in this life, Dow is not biologically related to me. I met Dow at college. So it's interesting how it's almost like the lives adapt to the life that as we progress and we move through civilization. But when I had that dream about Kat, it kind of really brought forth the understanding of how important she is to me and why I felt so connected. And like, it's interesting because when Kat first met me, she had more of a competitive mindset for the music program, and I did not. I was not a competitive person when it came to music. I was more of just wanting to reach my goal of like teaching and guiding through music. So I was more just there for education. And I remember specifically, she's like, I'm going to take that first chair from you. And I was like, bitch, you can have it. You can have it. I don't want it. I don't want the responsibility that comes with playing it. And I'm tired of my professor jumping down my throat about how I don't practice enough. It's all yours. And she was like, really? I was like, yes, yes, it's not for me. And she had never experienced that in the previous school that she was in coming into college, and I think that really opened her eyes up that I was a different person. And then through time, but I just remember, not through time, hello. Just through time, we started to really bond, but I always felt connected to her when she came in. I didn't feel like this need of what others might have felt like intimidation because of like the possibility of her coming from my first chair. Even though I wasn't a competitive person, it's just like, she's good. And I just was okay with that. I didn't feel envy. I didn't feel jealousy. I was like, oh, I just like her. Okay, yeah, cool. I want to get to know her. And yeah, so I've got several people in my life who I feel these past life connections to that aren't just romantic. So I'll bring somebody on in the podcast episode that I talk about finding the dead body on college, because he was there with me. And that would be Ryan. And I feel like he in every life has been my grandpa. But in this life, he is just my best friend that I met at college, just like Dow. So yeah, there's some of my there's some of my memories regarding past lives. I hope that that helps you kind of get a grasp and like understanding how impactful these memories are to me as a person, and like really just making me feel like I have to have these people in my life. And I think that that's a great segue into understanding like soulmates and twin flames. And so, um, according to the internet, a twin flame is a spiritual a spiritual concept describing a deep, intense soul connection between two people, often considered to be two halves of the same soul inhabiting different bodies, mirroring each other's strengths and weaknesses, and creating a powerful and transformative relationship. Essentially, it's the idea of meeting someone who feels like your other half on a profound level. That was a lot of words. Well, let's just sum that up. So, soul mirroring, intense connection, not always romantic, and challenges and growths. So when you break it down like that, there's definitely people that come into your life where you might feel like deeply connected, or like they're, if it's in a romantic aspect, like they're supposed to be that one, but really what it is the universe presenting the person who is on the same level as you, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and they're mirroring your soul, right? And that's why you feel that intense connection, because you're like, oh, this is me. This person is me. This is my other half. And they often will mimic your strengths and weaknesses, which it's like forcing you to confront your own, what's the word, like shadow aspects, which means like the, if you want to use like psychology terms, like maybe your unhealed traumas, or if you're using spiritual terms, maybe your side of your spirituality that you haven't let out. And when I think about this with the person that I shared the first past life memory with, I really, really think that this was it. They weren't a soulmate, so to speak, but more of the twin flame aspect, like somebody who presented into my life who was in just as a unhealthy mindset as I was at the time, and we mirrored each other's strengths and weaknesses, and it helped. It helped in the long run, you know. It was really hard to move through a relationship like that, and when it ended after being together for so long, it really, like, when my soulmate, or not my soulmates, when my ancestors said that I was gonna die, like with the death of myself, I think it was the referencing the death of my spirit and having to completely rebuild myself, because after that relationship I 100% had to go through some of the darkest times in my life. I lost the desire or the understanding of wanting to live, and was like thinking about unliving myself, and like everyone's like, oh, he let a relationship. No, like it wasn't a relationship that did this, but the fact that I in this relationship for so long, without that relationship I did not know who I was, and I had sacrificed so much, so that I just, who was Ariana without this person? And I didn't even know I had lost so much of my core values, and so much of different aspects of my spirituality that just weren't existing because I was sacrificing so much. And I think that person could say the same for them too. That they had to sacrifice different things and that, all that. But so I would like, if I'm gonna say that a twin flame and a soulmate are different, I definitely would say that the twin flame is more of like somebody who enters your life either at a time where you need to grow, or a time where you're already like a very blossoming, gorgeous flower. And can be a soulmate, can be the person that you end up with, but can also just be the person that is meant to be, just not made to last. And it's interesting, after I've like did more research on the twin flame and soulmate, I kind of like understand why there's both terms. Because I would say that the people in my life, like Dow and Ryan, though there is no romantic connection, they are soulmates. They are not my twin flames because I don't see them as, well, I don't know. It's kind of tricky because they definitely met me where I was at too in college and have continued to do so as we move through life. I don't know. That's just the definition of a twin flame. And then the definition, according to the internet, of a soulmate is a person who, a person with whom one feels a deep natural connection, often categorized by a sense of understanding, compatibility, and shared values, as their souls are destined to be together. It's a romantic ideal describing a profound and unique bond with another person, often considered to be a perfect match on a deeper level than just physical attraction. However, it doesn't have to always be romantic. It's like, okay, it's kind of the same thing, right? If you really sit there and, my hair is driving me nuts. If you really sit there and compare, they're kind of the same thing. You know, I think that if I was going to say that they're different, the twin flame has more of the capacity to come and go, as like a soulmate, I think will stay forever. And one of the highlighting factors that popped up on the internet's research was that I found interesting that was different from the twin flame was the spiritual belief. The concept of soulmates is often tied to spiritual beliefs, suggesting a preordained connection between two souls, saying that like these two people are meant to be as like destiny, right? And when you compare that to a twin flame, that's destiny too, right? This is a person that shows up to show you the things that are within yourself. Like, I think it's just so hard to say which is one or the other. Anyways, I definitely find it interesting that even someone like me who's very devoted, I can't talk today. Who's very devoted to my spirituality and like feels like at times I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. There's definitely times in my life and in the past and still in the present where I'm like, I have no idea what the hell is going on. Okay? No idea. And, you know, these people that have come into my life who I feel like I have these soul connections to, these soulmates and or twin flames, the majority of them have not left. And you know, it's kind of up for you to interpret whether you want to use the terminology of a twin flame or soulmate or neither. If you don't feel like you've lived a different life, a previous life. Because there's definitely souls on this earth who it's their first life. In 2024, it's their first life that they've never lived one before. And then there's people like me who have old souls who have lived thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. Because, like I said before, my beliefs is that you have this soul contract with when your ball of energy soul was created, and you get to choose what your purpose is. And I think that corresponds with how many times you live. I think sometimes people are not created. Sometimes people choose to just be the lesson for others. And maybe that only shows up in one life, or maybe that shows up in several, and they have an old soul. And then there's people like me who choose to teach and guide. You can't just teach and guide in one life. No way. How many teachers do you know that was like, yeah, I'm going to teach, or they just teach for 1 year? No, if you're a true teacher, you fall in love with it. You crave it. You want to help people and guide them on their own path. And it is so beautiful when you see that person blossom. I'm getting emotional. Whew, here we go. I'm so passionate about looking at the people who I've helped in the past and seeing them 10 years down the line. Now, I'm 27, and so 10 years I'm talking about when I was 17, and I met people like Dow and Ryan, and seeing their growth and helping them, and as they helped me, it's beautiful. And I've come across a lot of other people that I can't name, but there's just to look and see where their lives are now, or just even like if I can't find them, there's some people that I've helped in the mental health field, where obviously with HIPAA you can't contact them or see them outside of the environment for so many years. But I just like with them, I was working with minors, so I was like, I'm not gonna ever reach out to them. I don't want that to be like weird, like I don't want no weird attachment to develop or anything. And so I know that I helped a lot of people in so many different ways, and it's when I really feel connected to myself and I really dive down into my purpose and all these like soulful connections, I would continue to live this life over and over and over again. And I know how that sounds, because I've definitely, just in this life, not even referencing the previous ones, I have thought about unaliving myself or attempted several times. And people were like, wait, what? How can you feel so grateful for your life existence but also consider unaliving yourself? And I'm like, well, because when I felt that way, I wasn't connected to my spirituality. Or when I felt that way, you know, as a teenager in your life, you got all these hormones and all these things and you got no one there for you, and then you feel trapped and it feels like the only way that you could escape. And I think a lot of teenagers feel that way, and then people are so harsh on them. We as humans have decided that for some reason that once you turn 18 you're an adult. And I saw this thing, I can't remember who it was, that in reality I really like to say that you're once you turn 20, every year after that, it's like 1 year an adult. So I'm 27, so I'm a 7-year-old adult. Because like our brains, I think it's women's brains stop developing at 24, 25. I'm not 100% sure, I can't remember. And men's brains is like 26 and 27 or something. But our brains don't fully stop developing until our mid-late 20s. And when it comes to things like whether it's your spirituality or something more going on in your life, it can be a really, really, really hard to want to stay in this life and remember the things that we do have to live for, especially if you don't have a purpose or don't feel like you have a purpose or don't know it. You can feel so lost and so like, I can't do this anymore. And that's just one factor, not to factor in like abuse and unconsensual harm of sexual relationships and stuff like that. Like, there's so much into it. And so I really want to emphasize that even though I recognize that I'm a teacher and guider and I sign up for this life after life after life, I still question whether or not I can do it. But I do believe that we can. We can do it if you really connect to who you are and what you're here to do. I think that that's a good way to drive yourself forward. Or find somebody in your life, hopefully find someone in your life who can help you see that. And unfortunately, I don't think there's enough light to overshadow the darkness. You know, some people slip through the cracks. Oh my gosh, slip through the cracks, and we can't save everyone. And that also comes back to like, I have had those dark points and I wasn't able to help other people. I had to help myself first, and now I feel I'm at a point. That's why I'm able to share this podcast and share these experiences with people and with you guys and the listeners. And I greatly, greatly appreciate that you are here listening and sitting through my ADHD ass of jumping around from topic to topic and sitting through the happy and the heavy back and forth. And I mean, like, yeah, this is something I want to continue to listen to. And I just, like, my whole point is to help you guys. There I go, getting off track again. Let me jump back. Okay. So, soulmates, twin flames, past lives. Yes, talked about those. So, I want to, it kind of great segue actually, because of that, really emphasizing how much my emotions and this and that and going through all these ups and downs and having these people in my life. I would classify myself as an empath. And for those who don't know what an empath is, I'll give you the Google definition. Oh my gosh. This podcast is going to be funny for most people because apparently I don't know how to talk. All right. An empath is someone who is highly attuned to emotions of others and can experience those emotions on a deep level. And I think for me, an empath is someone who, it goes a little bit further than just like, oh, they can experience emotions. Well, how? Because you feel the energy wavelengths of other people. And so when you come across a soulmate, you and you, especially if you have the past life remembrance, when you come across them and you feel this energy, and you can feel that they have that same energy towards you. Maybe they don't know how to describe it, but it just like really hits hard. I think that some people need to know that there's difference between having empathy, having sympathy, and being an empath. Having empathy means that you can experience emotions on a deeper level with other people, but being an empath is that you like absorb them and take them on for yourself. So if somebody's sitting and telling you that they're like super down and depressed, and often empaths will become depressed with them and sit with them, and I've seen a couple instances, and sometimes it works for me at times and sometimes it doesn't, but I think that an empath can even go as far as relieving some of those emotions from people because they take them on themselves, and so it doesn't feel as heavy for that person. I'm not saying they take them away all the way. I'm saying that I think that some empaths have the capacity to take those emotions harder on themselves, and that person feels a little bit lighter. And I would say that my sister-in-law is phenomenal at this. She's done that for me a lot this year. She definitely made those feelings feel a lot lighter by channeling her inner empath. Oh, yeah, inner empath. Okay, and then sympathy is the ability to understand one person's feelings. No, I'm sorry, that's empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand another person's feelings, while sympathy is feeling concern for someone who is going through a hard time, and holding, like, being sympathetic for them. Like, oh, that really sucks, but isn't able to understand. And I think that humans crave empathy and empaths, and because it can feel very invalidating when somebody is only capable of sympathy. I think for someone like me who feels so deeply, that I really struggle with. Oh my gosh, a bug just crawled on my leg. I really struggle with somebody who's like just trying to support me through something that I'm going through and hasn't had those kinds of struggles. It feels like that kind of mindset of like, well, how could you ever know what it truly feels like? And I think that's incredibly valid in feeling that, and it can be invalidating to those who are empaths, to those people who do pick up on the emotions and who do feel them. And I remember I had to have this, or I tried to have this conversation with someone in college, and I understand now what they were trying to say, but then I just like could not understand. We got into the discussion about racism and how I could never understand what it feels like to be of a person of color because I present white. And I was trying to explain to them, like, yes, this is true. I am not treated differently because I don't look that way. However, I really, really do feel your feelings. And, like, I could see it, like, it was just like this, not progressive not progressive, what's the word? Not, the conversation wasn't progressing forward because we both were, like, not able to see the other person. Like, it invalidated this person that I said, yes, but I can feel for you. And it invalidated me that this person was like, you can never understand. But again, like, I understand it a lot better now, because I'm not going to sit here and say that I do know what it feels like to be treated differently for my skin color, because I'm not treated differently in society from my skin color. Though I have been from my family in different ways, but I have not been, like, because I present Caucasian, I don't have to stress so much about police and this and that and the other. I was just trying to talk about, so, like, the difference between empathy, sympathy, and being an empath. And for those who are trying to discover if you are an empath, here are some signs that can correspond with that. If you feel these things, or if you experience these, it might mean that you're an empath. And those can be feeling overwhelmed. Girl. Do y'all hear this? I cannot talk today. It's alright. It's alright. I'm still gonna keep it in there because I know you guys are gonna think it's funny. And I want to be as authentic as I possibly can. There are gonna be a few edits in this because I accidentally slipped a name or slipped a gender. Anyways, signs of being an empath. Feeling overwhelmed in crowded places. Having a low threshold for stimulation. Taking on other people's emotions as your own. Having a strong intuition. Feeling misunderstood or like you don't fit in. Experience exhaustion and burnout. It almost sounds like social anxiety. Like, okay. That's just what the internet said. For me, what I interpret, if I can pick up as somebody's an empath, is definitely the number one, like, they take on my emotions. And I can literally feel the energy transferring from me to that person. I can feel that I will, like, I could have this weight whenever I'm having a lot of anxiety or I'm going through a lot. I feel the weight on my chest. And if I'm sitting with an empath and telling them my feelings, or just sitting with them and they're trying to help, I can feel the weight not feel so heavy. I can feel the difference from, like, 50 pounds to 10 pounds. I think that's the number one. I also I would agree with the feeling overwhelmed in crowded spaces, though that can correspond with a lot of things like anxiety and all that. Because if you're in tune with your empathy, if you're in tune with being an empath and in tune with your spirit, and you go into a place with a lot of people, for instance, like funerals for me, funerals are sad in general, but I generally don't attend them anymore at this point in my life because it is so, I feel like I don't want to live because I feel everyone's grieving, not just mine, everyone's grieving. And so, like, it can be overwhelming in crowded places. And I started attending music festivals in 2021. And when I first started attending, I really enjoyed them. But as I've gotten older and connected more with my spirit, the music festivals are just so overwhelming for me. Even though all these people generally seem pretty happy, you'll come across a couple who are having bad experiences, bad trips, and all that. But overall, most of these people are just really happy to be there and want to see the music. You get a couple that are being rude, like pushing through you, whatever. But I feel like I'm on the verge of having an anxiety attack if I'm not grounded, if I don't do the steps to, like, ground my spirit and try to almost, like, turn off the empath. And you can't, in my experience, you can't fully turn it off, but you can, like, do things to help reduce the amount of, like, aura that you output for it. And yeah. So I would definitely go along with the overwhelmed and crowded places, and how that I become easily overstimulated as well. because of I think because of my empathy, like, I'm already feeling my emotions on top of whoever I'm around, and then if it gets loud, or if there's people who I don't know who I can feel their, like, ill intent, it's just too much at times. And yeah, I definitely would say that. I think another thing for empathy for me, empathy, why do I keep saying empathy, empath, for being an empath, is that you're able to, it can go, it can present its way in a physical way as well, in the sense of if you're constantly around people who are in a negative environment, your body will start to react. Like, you won't get sleep. You won't, um, you won't. Getting sleep was the one I was thinking of. If I'm around a lot of people who are really down in the dumps, I notice that I stop eating. Even though I'm okay, like I don't have anything going on in my life, I'll stop eating, I won't sleep, and I just will become a couch potato. And I definitely take on that. And I think another thing for empathy that it presents itself in a physical, spiritual way is that I can see through aura the emotions of people. And I know other people can too. And just a real quick snippet, aura is the energy that our life force outputs. So I believe that we have a spirit, and then we have our physical body. And when your spirit has certain colors that associate with it, of like what its purpose is supposed to be, how you're feeling, or like what element you connect with, and different stuff like that. And so if you're able to read auras and see them, it's actually really invasive, and I try really hard not to unless that person gives me permission, or if I'm in a space where I need to know that I'm safe around this person. So if I am out at a bar or something and somebody approaches me, I might, if the conversation's going whatever, I might see a little bit just to know if I'm safe around this person, to try and read what their intentions are. And certain colors mean certain things, like pink is love. And I actually learned in 2021 that I thought I knew all the colors and all the auras. And in 2021, I discovered very quickly, not very quickly, I discovered after a relationship that was extremely unhealthy and ended up being with a narcissist, that there's a specific color for someone who has a manipulative tendency. And to me, that presents as a maroon red. And that was very like eye-opening for me, that is, I get to a point sometimes in my spirituality and I'm like, yeah, I got this. I know what's going on. And then the universe is like, no, you don't. Big old slap in the face. Like, no, you still got a lot of learning to do. You're going to learn the rest of your life. And you're going to grow the rest of your life. You're going to heal the rest of your life. And I think that that's something that I tend to forget. And there's probably people out there who are listening to this or not listening to this, but you might know, who also forget that. You never stop growing. You never stop healing. And yeah. Yeah. So signs of being an empath, those go with it. I wanted to share that I find it interesting to correspond our society, well, not interesting, well, yeah, I find it interesting, the correspondence of our societal norms with spirituality, right? This is kind of the whole point of my podcast, is to explain how living in this world of fuckery corresponds with being a spiritual person. And so I find that I'm an empath because my spirit, my third eye's open, and that I think my soul as a teacher and a guider needs that to be able to connect and communicate with people. And if you look into the psychology part of it or the therapeutic part of it, there are some therapists and researchers who have discovered, this is just from the internet, discovered mirror neurons in the brain which allow us to mirror emotions of others. Some people may have more mirror neurons than others, which may suggest that empaths exist. So there's like kind of scientific research on it, but there are some therapists that say it can be caused by childhood trauma from having to overly adapt to your environment, or being raised by an alcoholic, depressed, or narcissistic parents. Some people believe it's just the natural gift of our human souls to be able to connect so deeply on an emotional level and spiritual level. And I think I would say that I believed in both, because is that like corresponding, or like Retta said, like living in today's world and being a spiritual person, because I definitely think it's just part of my soul contract that I need to be empathetic to connect with other people and teach and guide them. And I was raised by alcoholic parents, and I would say, again, before I go into my parents, both my parents did the best that they possibly could. And what that means is every person has their own shit to deal with. And sometimes when it comes to parenting, those parents haven't dealt with their own shit and they don't know that they haven't dealt with their own shit, and so then it goes unhealthily onto the children. Both of my parents had a really messed up childhood, and it trickled over into mine and my brother's lives, and I have gotten to the point where I can forgive them, and I understand, because I genuinely know what it means when I say they did the best they possibly could. And really take that in for yourself. If somebody needs to heal from something going on in their life right now, or their parents, like, really sit with yourself and think about how today I can record this podcast episode and I'll probably edit it. And that's all I have to give today. Whereas yesterday, all I could do was lay in bed. So, and the day before that, maybe I'm more emotionally open. We have a capacity, we have a limit as humans, individual people, that I think we forget, or we don't know, or we just I think it's our soul was so upset that we felt like we deserved a better upbringing, and that's not what we got. And so, you could become angry or you victimize yourself. And I'm not dismissing, there are some upbringings that you're like, what in the actual but particularly my parents had so much unhealed trauma within their self, and then it trickled on to me and my brother. And so this is why what I was getting at was that, my mom, I would definitely say, is undiagnosed bipolar and narcissistic, and was probably depressed as we went through kids, and definitely had the depressed episodes when we lost our stepfather and things like that. And it was an alcoholic for a little bit too. And this is when I was really young. And my dad, he is a stereotypical macho man who can't connect with his feelings worth of shit. He's talking about when I was younger, and he definitely, it wasn't allowed in his family to talk about his feelings, and at least from my understanding. And he definitely had the stereotypical mindset, well, men do this, you're not a man if you don't do that. And it definitely projected onto my brother. I think my mom's unhealed trauma projected more onto me, and my dad's onto my brother, though we both were damaged by our parents. Now, that being said, both of my parents to this day have made significant improvement and have taken the time to heal themselves at their own pace, because not everyone can heal at the pace that you need it. I've had several conversations with them, and at this point I would say that both of my parents are my biggest supporters in my life, and I'm so grateful. Here I go getting emotional again, because it's so real that it's so real that when we look at our childhood, and that upbringing conditions us to things like I said, researchers are finding that it can make you an empath. And when I think about my parents' my childhood with them, I definitely still have a lot of feelings, but they're so different now. Both of my parents, they're great. They're great, and they definitely still have their flaws and things that they need to work through, just like I do, just like anyone does. But if you were to compare them from my childhood to today, you wouldn't recognize them. I will never forget when my mom, mind you, I grew up with the narcissistic tendency, so there was no accountability for the things that my mom did. that would make me and my brother feel different things, or that added to the trauma. Whereas, was it in 2020, my mom took accountability and was like, I'm sorry that I was a shit mom when you were a kid, you deserve better. And I was like, holy shit, hell froze over. And it's like, there's research that narcissism is a trait that develops out of a traumatic childhood too. And I think that's probably, yeah, I would say it's pretty accurate to why my mom was the way she was. Um, but yeah. So I thought that that was important to share. And again, please don't attack my parents. They're beautiful humans now. They support me in so many ways. So, and I know that they're going to watch this and probably have some feelings, and that's okay. You know, this is about me sharing my story to help other people, and that will correspond with the people in my life. And I just want you guys to know that I'm super proud to be your guys' daughter and that I love you. Okay, enough with all the deep emotional stuff. So, I feel like I really touched on everything that I wanted to, except, not except, but I really wanted to highlight a little bit more about transferring of energy. So we talked about past lives and the memories of those and how that transfers over into like believing someone's a soulmate, and then how that transfers over, especially if you're an empath, like feeling those emotions really deeply. And I like I also want to talk about how the transferring of energy from our trauma comes forth. So we move through life, and it kind of jumps back on like how much growth my parents have done, and as me as a person. When I get to talking to people, they're like, what? You're 27 and you figure this out? Like, I talk to a lot of older people where I work, probably in like, I would say 50s and up. And when I share my life story and talk about these like things that I believe in, and how much progress I've made, they're like, whoa, how did you figure that out at 27? And I'm like, well, some people would say it's the will of God inside of me. Others would say, hello. Others would say that I had no choice with the traumatic upbringing I had. And then I think for myself, I think it's a little bit of everything. Like, definitely that my soul was made to be a teacher and guider. And so that's really a root driving, even if I didn't know that it was driving me. And I think that where was I going? Oh my gosh. So yeah, transfer of energy. So as an empath, you can transfer the energy and take it away from people so they don't feel so heavy. But I also want to talk about, as an empath for myself, when I am upset, when I am angry, the whole room can feel it. Okay? Like, we project our emotions unintentionally. It's just the energy that we give off. Like, if you don't have some type of aura cap on you, the whole room is gonna know. And it's a blessing, and it's a curse at the same time, like a double-edged sword, because like there are definitely moments where I don't want people to know that I'm upset, but we can just feel it. They can just feel it, even if they're not an empath. They can just feel that like radiant fire coming off of me when I'm angry. But I also think it's a blessing, because I think even the most like ignorant to people to emotions can pick up on it. And so that helps convey a message sometimes if you're not able to use your words for certain reasons, like if it's your boss or whatever. So yeah, that's the gist of past lives and soulmates and transferring of energy. Oh, I said I would talk about the transferring of energy into my paintings in the back of the picture here. So the one that is more colorful, which is on my right, but it's probably going to be your left. I think it's backwards. Anyways, the one right here is colorful. If you're not watching, I'll try to do a quick description. But it is a self-portrait of a time in my life where I had been fired for the first time and was like dealing with a lot of trauma around that, because the person who fired me told me I had a safe place to talk to them about my emotions, and I communicated, was like, I don't feel like I can communicate them in a professional way. I would really rather not. And this person kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and so I did, and then it resulted in me getting fired. And so I painted this as what later turned into, this is how I now paint people's spirits for them. One of the ways. I paint them in two different ways. And it is a representation of how I felt / my core, who I am. I'm a very resilient, brave, outspoken, like a person who seeks justice, tries to always do the right thing, and can be aggressive about that. Man, I can be so aggressive about what is right, and can make people uncomfortable at times, and I don't try to, and there's some situations where you need to, but I really try not to. And I think that when you look at this, you see so much black in it for as being as colorful as it is, because of the aggression, because of the anger I was feeling, because of the stripped away of like justice. Because what I was fired for, I can see that person's perspective, but also what I was trying to communicate was the things I saw wrong at this specific institution, and was like, institution at the specific place, and was like, if you guys don't change these things, this and this and this. And I was saying it a lot more calm. Like, I recognized I was not calm when I said it, because I had a lot of emotions running really high, and that's why I expressed that I couldn't express it. But this was definitely like a turning point for me in my life of like, I'm not gonna stand up for, or I'm not gonna take shit. If it's wrong, I'm gonna speak out against it. I don't care if it costs me my job, and I don't, to a degree, don't care if it costs me my life. And I know what that sounds like. What? No, you wouldn't. You're just saying that now, and that's what, like, we can say things, and we might react different in the moment. But being that I've been in a lot of extremely crisis situations, and there's been a lot of things where I've almost lost my life, I feel like I can very accurately say that, and authentically say that I would be willing to put my life down on the line for what is right, especially if it's happening in front of me. That being said, I'm not like out here protesting and throwing myself down on the railroad tracks for this and that. I'm not like super huge advocate for justice, but it's in my soul to be a justice seeking person. So if I'm out having lunch with my friend and I see somebody treating somebody different because of their color or their gender or their sexuality, yes, I will speak out. I don't care. It's not okay to treat people differently for just being their self. Just things like that's a smaller thing, but I would definitely think that, I would, depending on the circumstance, would definitely throw my life in the way of harm to help speak out for others. And yeah, so that's that one. This other painting on my left is, wow, this is I painted this when I was with that person who was a narcissist, and there's like a sequence of 3 of them, and I'll link my art page if you're curious into looking. I'll make sure I link it directly to those 3. There's a sequence of 3 of them, and they're the darkest paintings I've ever painted in my life. I don't paint dark things anymore at this point, but that transference of energy came forth of like, I was so disconnected from my spirituality, because this person was really good at making me question it with them being manipulative and narcissistic, and I was so disconnected that it came out in my art. And so if you look at this, she's got like a demon coming out of her chest, and then there's this eye that's crying on one side, and there's like red and blue, and the red and blue correspond with the red road and the blue road, which I talked about in a previous episode, but they're flip-flopped. So if you look here, the red road part, the red part of it has like a demon hand coming out of it, and the blue part's crying. Because in my beliefs, the red road is that of the creator, and the blue road is just that of anything else. But this person had me so crickety quackety backwards that I was flipping my purposes and all this. And so this is a representation of, like, I would say of myself being confused with my spirituality, and like the part of her ripping her chest and that demon coming forth is like feeling like it's taking over me, but also kind of coming to terms, because she looks very peaceful, like coming to terms with like, this is my reality now. And when you look at the sequence, I have two other ones, you'll see that you can connect mind, body, and spirit. The whole point of talking about those is to show that the transfer of energy comes in different ways, like through music and art. Like, that's why I think a lot of artists create these beautiful songs, a lot of composers write this just captivating, symphonies and symphonies and things. And for me as an artist and a musician, they come out in both ways. And I will eventually drop an album I'm working on this year. I'm trying to drop it by next year, and you'll definitely hear it come out in that, the different energy transfers of their soulful connections. So that's a lot to take in. Hopefully you grasp something from there. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the comments below, or message me, DM me if you have me on social media. Thank you so much for joining. I really look forward to releasing these episodes every week, because there's like so much to talk about. It just makes me so excited to just be able to connect with some people. I've already had a lot of positive feedback, or people reaching out to me and like saying, oh, this podcast is helping me. I'm struggling with my spirituality and now I feel like I don't have to. Or people just like reaching out and being like, what does it mean to be spiritual? And like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is awesome that I'm out here helping people, and that the humans in my life were able to be a part of that too. So thanks so much for watching. Watching. Oh my god. Thanks so much for watching. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this was a lengthy episode, a lot of words, a lot of stuff going on, and my ADHD jumped in the way. Undiagnosed, by the way, self-diagnosed, but it makes sense, because I'm all over the place when I talk about things. Yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I look forward to sharing the next one and being able to answer any questions and comments. You guys are all beautiful. You're loved. We're all struggling. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's got it together. I don't care how much they say they do. And I hope that you can open up your spirit and your heart to know that you're not alone, and that there are people in the human race who want you to grow and prosper and support you. And I'm one of them. So thank you so much. Yeah. Bye. I'm always so awkward with the ending. Oh, I love it. Love it. But that's authentically me, isn't it? Oh my gosh.